So I did a pottery firing yesterday and it didn't come out so good, and I wanted to talk to you about it and kind of get your feedback on what you think the problem was. I do a lot of pottery firings, or in the course of the history of my involvement in pottery, I have done a lot of pottery firings. So I've got it worked out pretty well. I usually have very good success rates. The last firing I did was for a workshop. I had a big pile of student pottery. I don't know, there must have been 20 pieces in there. And they all fired and came out great. So I'm used to that. I'm used to things usually coming out good. When things go bad, it's hard to deal with sometimes, especially when things go really bad. And honestly, it was catastrophic in that all the pots fired broke in one way or another. And I'll show you the pots in a minute. So firing pottery outdoors like that, in an open firing, is a bit of an emotional roller coaster. My friend Sherilyn Caver first said that, and I thought about it, and it's really true. You really build up this anticipation, looking forward to the firing, thinking about what you have to do. And then while you're doing it, your emotions are high, you're tense as you set everything up and try to get it done perfectly. But then if it comes out bad, you can be really depressed. But if it comes out good, you can be walking on air. Which reminds me of a YouTuber friend of mine who recently I talked to, and I said, hey, why haven't you posted a video in a while? He said that last pottery firing we had was so bad that we just haven't really been feeling it lately. And I said, I totally get it. I've been there. When a firing comes out bad, it can really set you back. And that's how this firing yesterday was. I had 3 beautiful pots to fire. This little Kanishpa polychrome, this was called a Kiva jar, had a lid, I'll get to that. And this recurve rim bowl, and this little small bowl. So my plan was to smudge the 2 bowls and fire the polychrome pot. Pretty straightforward firing. I've done quite a few smudged firings. Last one I did was that big Dinwiddie polychrome bowl. I'll link that up in the doobly-doo in case you want to see that. And so in order to do it, first of all, I set the bowl on the ground. I clear the coals out of the way and set the pot on the ground. And before I even had all the wood stacked over the top, looking at the bottom of this bowl, you can see it's very cracked now. But I started to see these cracks developing.
What do you call those darn dogs?
Oh, it's broken. Oh, that pot's broken. It's broken all over. Look at that.
Holy Moses, look at that.
Wow. It's going too. It might be breaking right now. It looks like that crack. And as you watched it, you could see it grow even. And I didn't realize that the smaller bowl had also cracked at that time. But once I opened the firing, it has a similar crack. Not as big, but the same kind on the bottom and kind of all over. Now, the polychrome jar, the lid must have blown up in the firing because I never found it. All I found was a little piece of the handle. So it must have exploded. And then I have this big spall on the bottom. Oh, that's got a big old spall on the bottom. That's too bad. There's basically 3 kinds of breakage that are common in outdoor firings. There's spalls. That's moisture in your pottery. That is, it didn't get preheated good enough. There was a little bit of moisture in there that tried to get out when it was heated and it blew it off. I understand that. The primary fire wasn't real active. It just kind of sluggish and lethargic, and it didn't produce a lot of heat, and these probably didn't get preheated the way they should have. So that I can kind of get behind. Perhaps that's what happened to the lid too. I didn't find enough to kind of do any triage on it to know what happened to it, but I'm thinking probably similar. So that's preheating. That's fine. I can deal with that. Another type of breakage that we common get in outdoor firings is thermal shock. That's usually when the pottery is heating up real fast. When the fire is first lit, it's really burning up really fast. It can crack the pottery because it's heating so quickly. And the same can happen on the other end. When it's done, if it cools too quickly, usually that comes along with pulling it out of the fire too soon, letting a cold breeze get a hold of it, and then you can hear it crack when that happens. Thermal shock cracks look a lot like this, but it wasn't in that situation. It was sitting on the hot ground. Could it have been the heat coming off of that ground? I just can't imagine. I set pots, cool pots, hand touchable pots, over hot coals all the time. And I almost never, unless there's a tempering problem, have thermal shock at that moment. So maybe that's what it is. These are both relatively new clays to me. This is the brown clay I got in Safford last year. This is that red clay I collected in the mountains last year. There's videos on both of these, which I will link in the doobly-doo if you want to go back and catch up on that. So they are newer clays to me. So it's possible they're more sensitive to thermal shock. Why are they both on the bottoms though? You would think this sitting on the hot ground, the part that would get hot the fastest, the part that would be most likely to suffer from thermal shock would be around the rim where it's touching that hot ground. And yet there are no cracks in the rims. The cracks are all in the bottom. That is peculiar. Now, because they were smudged, I took some vegetation and I stuffed it inside both bowls before I put them on the ground, because that vegetation will burn, will carbonize and create that nice black finish that I have on both bowls. But the vegetation I grabbed may have still been alive as opposed to dead, dry vegetation. I'm wondering, my theory is that that vegetation I grabbed had moisture in it. When I put it in there under there, that moisture quickly turned to steam. That steam rose, hit the bottoms of these upside down bowls and caused this breakage. Now, do you guys have any experience? Do you guys have any ideas? Leave them in the comments. The whole purpose of this video is because I'm not really sure what caused this breakage and I want to see what you think of it. Oh, also before I go, earlier in the video I said there were 3 ways that pots can break in a firing. So they were the spalls that you get from moisture, thermal shock. I'm not saying this is thermal shock, but it looks like that. It's kind of like, you know, spidery sort of straight cracks. And overfiring, which I don't have any to show you of here, but that's when the clay gets too hot and it kind of starts to break down. This is not overfiring because this happened before I even built the secondary fire. So that's not what this is, but that's the other way pots break in firings commonly. All right, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Leave a comment. Thanks for watching. I should use some cover shirt. Just too much, this charcoal fell over it, you know. Okay. It just got smothered. I wanted to see that red, but I'm not going to see it. It's just going to be black and black.
Well, it's kind of subtle.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, and it'll redden up as it cools, but it got buried.